let me just go to this whole, like, not welcoming any bids thing, not, he's not for sale. Firstly, respect to the reporters. They are bringing us the news, and thank you to them. They do a brilliant job. We wouldn't have things to talk about without them. And let's add to it this context. Of course, this is Newcastle's stance. Like, we know this. Now, with the amount it's being said from all four journalists I've mentioned there, and there's probably more, Ben Jacobs, whoever, I think that makes it pretty clear that Newcastle are really sending out the message. He's not for sale. We're not entertaining. But we know he's not for sale. Like, not every transfer that's happened is because the player's been for sale. With Tonali and Gordon, there might have been more of a reluctance and acceptance that they were probably going to go. But for sale, therefore, that makes them somewhat more for sale, I suppose. But of course, Bruno isn't for sale. And of course, their stance is going to be, we have no interest in selling him. Of course, that actually, if we're honest, shouldn't change anyone's position on how they view this transfer. And maybe I've actually made the mistake of looking a bit too much into that before. Bruno has told them he wants to leave. Arsenal have, clearly enough contacts happened to a point of Bruno wanting to tell Newcastle this. So Arsenal put themselves in a strong position with that. Now, I hope that what Samuel Mockbell said is correct, that there is an understanding that they're going to have to go above 60 million because the player's too good. Now, will they have to go to 100 million? Got my blessing. I've made that point very, very clear across multiple videos and channels and streams or whatever. However, Arsenal might feel they can get him for less. And quite frankly, if you get him for even the same amount Tottenham paid for Tonali, then you have come out with an amazing deal, in my opinion. But it'd be phenomenal value if they met somewhere in the middle at 70 to 80 to 85 million. Will they? I'm reluctant to say they will, because why would Newcastle? But I think the thing that's important to explore here is, and I might have said this on a previous video, so apologies for repeating myself. If Newcastle are in some sort of financial trouble, and there are some reports online and stuff that suggest that they might be, if they are needing to sell and they're looking at their sellable assets, they might look at Tonali as a big, big win already. They might look at that and go, you know what? Tonali, we got more than he was probably worth. Does that make a sale for Bruno Guimaraes if, and this if is so important because otherwise I know I'm talking complete nonsense, if it's true that there was some sort of agreement, if they don't make Champions League football a year ago, that he would be allowed to leave. I've mentioned it a few times, this report that did the rounds. If that was true, then maybe there's a degree of, all right, we know he's worth more, certainly at least the same as Tonali, but probably more. But you know what? We'll do a deal for slightly less because of a gentleman's agreement we had from a year ago, albeit we're still selling him for more than the gentleman's agreement was set out in the first place. It's a lot of juggling, I know. Forgive me. I hope I'm explaining it well enough. But what I'm saying is, maybe with 2 years left on his deal, the older player compared to Tonali has served Newcastle longer. Maybe there's more of a mutual respect there. Obviously, Tonali missed a year of football, didn't he? And maybe Newcastle felt that they were owed a little bit more from that situation. And if there has been this behind-the-scenes conversation, if we don't make Champions League football, have these aspirations, would you let me go? Well, yes, let's see. Maybe, depends on Champions League. Maybe that puts Arsenal in a stronger position than we realise. But you know what? For all my waffling, I know I very much waffled throughout all of that bit. I think the most crucial bit is, yes, the desire to keep the player from Newcastle's perspective might be stronger because they've lost Tonali and others. But their position of strength to convince Bruno Guimaraes not to force a move has weakened. It's much harder for him to see Isak go, Gordon go, Tonali go, and still kind of sit there and go, yeah, no, I still want to be a part of this. His faith in the project must be on the floor right now, as must so many Newcastle fans right now, as must Eddie House, to be honest. So from that perspective, they might just be like, what can we say to him? We've let these players go, and we didn't put up a massive fight, if we're honest, for the two that went this summer, and we've got no Champions League football. What's our leverage? 2 years left on his deal. What is our leverage here? And if we need the money, that compounds it even more. So the angle that Tonali going makes this a weaker position for Arsenal is one way to look at it. It might be true in some ways, but I really think that there is Arsenal, I don't think Arsenal would have got this far with Bruno Guimaraes and with the interest lasting this long, which has been now about 2 weeks. I don't think it'd have got this far if there wasn't genuine belief that Newcastle would do a deal at something that suited Arsenal. Now, it's also important to say these things can feel like they're going in one direction and then swing the other way very drastically. So, for example, Granit Xhaka, I was just convinced he was going to end up at Sunderland. Just felt right. Back in London, back playing for Xabi Alonso, a club that I could see him sort of doing a good 2 years of service for, probably competing for some trophies in the way he'd have hoped to or expected to at Chelsea. And how can Sunderland keep hold of it? You know, how could Sunderland keep hold of a 34-year-old who might have that final aspirations? But in the end, they did. In the end, clearly what happened behind the scenes was enough for Xhaka to believe that he should stay. And when I think of that, it does remind me that, you know, you can think it's all geared up to go in a certain direction. Even Guimaraes to Arsenal, it feels like there's a degree of destiny there. Like this has been built up for well over 6 years, maybe, since the first links when he was back playing in Brazil. I remember those. But this can go wrong. It can. And if Arsenal are to be supremely strict on their £60 million valuation, at best go to 65, 70, but they're asking for 100, then the two clubs are miles apart and they won't get there.